This concept of incredible customer experience and great customer service has existed since then, but how many brands even do it today, even remotely? It's so funny when you sort of go through the journey of mapping your life as a founder, just insanely how volatile it is. It's like there's no smooth curves. It's like awesome, terrible, awesome, terrible, awesome, terrible. There's a lot that is contributing to an erosion of great experiences, but the brands who do it well and the brands that prioritize it will absolutely seize the day.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the Make It Happen show. I'm Tim Morris, the CEO at The Entourage, and today I'm joined by Aaron Wallis, the founder and CTO of Lexer. Lexer is a customer data platform. What they do is they help business owners like you gather data and information on your customers so that you can service them better. This used to just be the domain of the big guys like Amazon, but what Lexer's doing is bringing it into the SME market. What I particularly loved about this conversation is that Aaron took a really complex topic and made it simple and approachable. So if you're in business and you want to service your customers better, this is the episode for you. Let's get into it. Aaron Wallis, it is fantastic to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Very well, very well. Yourself?
It's been a fun journey the last couple of years. Before we dive into the Lexer journey, which is super, super interesting, one of the great analogies I heard just before is you guys have been likened to Canva, right? Where Canva has taken, content creation design, it was kind of the realm of the few and they've kind of democratized it. That's really what Lexer's doing with customer data. It used to only be the big guys that really could access it, and now you are bringing it to the masses. How are you making that happen?
Yeah, it's a lovely analogy, and I'm, it's quite an honor to be compared. We're still far into our journey, behind them, but it's awesome to be in their wake and be watching what they're doing. The thing for us is that, like you sort of likened, to do some of the work that a person can do in Canva today, you would have had to have had a team of illustrators, photographers, graphic designers, publishers, all of that kind of stuff. And when we sort of look at data, data is very much the same. You need to have a really good IT team who has structured data well, got all of your data systems in a row, data scientists and business analysts who are actually analyzing the data, a really good suite of tools that are actually producing great data out of systems. So things like a really modern e-commerce platform and point of sale platform that's sort of all tightly woven and integrated. And then you need to have a really good marketing team who actually know how to use that data and how to put that into play. And when you add all those things together, you can sort of understand why the largest businesses are the ones that are doing it well, because it requires such an investment to be able to do that. And so the journey that Lex has been on is really how do we help a smaller organization be able to compete with the same capability, the same tools, but without the headcount and without the history. How can we allow a client to go from zero to hero in 60, 90, 180 days, whereas some of these larger organizations might have been working on this for a decade now. There's a lot of catch up being made in the market.
Would I be oversimplifying it to sort of couch it in these terms? It's like Amazon, one of the things that they've been able to do so well for a long time is kind of know everything about you. Like the recommendation engine in there is so good, and they're so good at serving up the right message, the right products, all at the right time. But obviously there's a huge amount that goes in behind that. And are you bringing that same kind of capability to smaller organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about, Amazon, we've all purchased from them. And they do really good jobs at things like replenishment cycles. So they know that 30 days after you buy some body soap, that it's probably time for you to buy a refill of that body soap, for example. That requires a huge team and a huge set of data, well analyzed, well structured. But in this SMB or a smaller enterprise, that's really hard to execute at scale. And what we're sort of really helping with as an organization is, how do we bring some of those things like predictive models, segmentation capabilities, activation capabilities, and provide it to a single marketer and make one marketer feel like 100 marketers backed by an amazing data team? That's what we've sort of been aspiring to do for some time. But what's interesting though is Amazon don't even have it right either, right? So I purchased a couple of weeks ago a shoehorn, to put on sneakers with. And I got an email 2 days ago. It was time for another. And I'm like, shoehorn's kind of one of those things that you only ever need one of. And so, we're sort of like, how do we actually help retail overall get better at this? Because even the most brilliant company in the world from data-driven marketing is still not doing a great job at it themselves.
They should have been like, you need a shoehorn for every room.
Yeah, for every pair of sneakers. Yeah, exactly.
And so what would be like a real kind of classic business that's using Lexer today? And yeah, what are some of the things you are helping them with in a real tangible sense?
Yeah, so we about 2 years ago we really doubled down and decided we're going to focus on the retail sector. We've always been, a B2C. We're supporting businesses that are B2C. And when we sort of look at that, we find that our technology and our expertise is best deployed on, fashion, beauty, luxury goods, and also things like adventure sports and outdoor activities and whatnot. Things where people have like either a strong brand affinity, or where the price points are actually really quite high, and so they're sort of considered like very special purchases, and people get really passionate about the product and the series. And really kind of the things we're helping them with in that journey are, firstly understanding who their best customers are and why they're a good customer. So if I think about something like a surfwear brand, there's a very big difference between someone who buys the pro level steamers versus a pretty bikini, right? And no, serious, but like historically, a lot of those surf brands would actually be communicating to both of those customers with the same emails or the same campaign activity. But there's a really, really big difference between that, because obviously you've got one category of people, one segment, who are deeply attached to the sport, the passion of surfing. They love the activity. Their holiday, every waking minute is thinking about the next time they're going to use that wetsuit. Whereas the individual who bought a bikini might only wear it once, might only wear it for a season, might not actually have any relationship to the brand itself, just kind of thought it looked nice. And so helping marketers and helping brands like understand the differences between those two categories of people and all of the categories in between them as well, to be able to create great experiences and help the brands develop and grow. That's kind of like our sweet spot. We're really passionate about that stuff. As you can probably tell, I got ranty. Yeah.
And no, that was awesome. And what data points do they draw on for that? Like, how does a business figure out that they've got one group of customers that sit over here and another group of customers sit over here, and they need to differentiate them?
I think the main data that we sort of see coming through is transaction histories. So data that's come out of e-commerce platforms or at the point of sale, loyalty data if they've got it. So if they're running loyalty programs, we would normally capture website browsing behavior. So using like a JavaScript tag, email activity. So what emails are you opening? What emails have you clicked on? And then basically stitching all of that together so that we can sort of understand that, here's a person, Tim, and these are the products that he's purchased before, and this is the sort of sequence of purchases that he has made. And with that, we can feed that into our sort of data science layers into the teams, and the sort of all of the automation kind of comes out of that.
Yeah, nice. And then from a marketer's point of view, I'm sitting inside one of these retailers, and then I have like nice segments of customers. I kind of got a better idea about who they are and how I should speak to them, and so I can tailor my messages to them and get better uptake, hopefully.
It's really common. Retailers don't actually know the gender of a customer, right? It's when you think about like your most recent e-commerce transaction, they ask you your name and your address and your email address so that they can post you the item and whatnot. But they don't really know about things like your birth date, your gender, your household income, these kind of pieces of information. So part of our technology is about helping fill in those blank spots. When a person comes through our system and their name is Tim, right? We've got like one of our simplest data models is inferring a person's gender from their name, so that we can help sort of tighten up the marketing messaging around that and make sure that, Tim, we're sending you items that we know that, are more into your interests than, this season's, fancy dresses for, spring races or whatever it might be.
Although this season's hottest bikinis, that could
Yeah.
be something high on my list.
Mate, what you do in your own time is, that's on to you, Tim. Yeah.
I'm like that rare combination between those two Venn diagrams of like steamer wetsuits and the latest bikini.
And bikinis. Very good.
You know what I this has reminded me of a story, and it may well be a bit of a business urban myth, but supposedly the first company that really got serious about gathering the data on their consumers, and this is long before CRMs. This is long before like businesses were tech enabled. Was Bally. Right, so Bally that make the super high-end shoes and menswear. I think supposedly it was like back in the 60s or 70s.
Right.
There was a Bally store in London and another one in New York and another one in another capital around the world. So there's like 3 or 4 of these stores, super premium. And what they'd do is every time you went into a Bally store and you bought something, they'd get out your customer file and they'd mark it down, and they'd mark down exactly what you'd bought and more details about you. But this was like a physical written on a card thing, and then they would, I think it was like telegraph the information to all the other Bally stores. So then when you walked into if you flew over the Atlantic, popped into New York, and you pop into the Bally store, probably a couple of days later, they'd be like, Mr. Wallis, welcome to the store. We can see that you've been buying this at our other stores. We've got some great recommendations for you. I would love it if that story was actually legit true, but it sounds like it's like the primitive version of what you guys are helping retailers do. Is that a good analogy?
It is, and you know what? I can't validate that story. I've not heard that myself, but I'm definitely going to go read up about that afterwards. Because what's if it is true, I want it to be true as well, right?
Yeah. Don't ruin the story for me either.
No, I won't. I'll keep my research to myself afterwards then. But if it is true, one of the crazy things is like, so this concept of incredible customer experience and great customer service has existed since then. But how many brands even do it today, even remotely, right? And so, one of the things that I'm really excited about and also really interested in sort of like observing in the market is, after living in lockdown as we have for so long, we have all, everyone, even my mum, has become sufficient in e-commerce shopping, right? Which that's a feat in itself, right? But the thing is that through e-commerce, we're all delivered a pretty good experience most of the time. And, when you go back to the website, it might remember what you've purchased. It might be making recommendations on alternate. It might, at least it should remember your like postal address and things like that so that you can check out faster. But when we go back into bricks and mortar retail, which, most of us in Australia anyway are doing now leading up to Christmas, the experience is going to be quite jarring because we don't really, the brand doesn't have that stuff as accessible as it has been online. And equally from a brand's perspective is they're used to collecting and having insights on what products have you looked at online? What did you add to the cart but then removed? What did you abandon? And all those kind of things. In bricks and mortar, that just completely disappears. You don't have that level of detail. And that for me is something that I'm really excited about. I think Lex is going to have a great couple of years ahead in helping brands really like fill that gap and bring that experience that you outlined from Bally like into the present day, because it should be, everyone should be doing that, particularly, if you're in the high end market and you want to be able to have people come back and drop thousands of dollars on an item every time they come into a store.
How ironic that what used to be like the high fidelity experience in store, now maybe after lockdown, it's going to be the low fidelity experience. You're like, you don't know me. It's not, while I'm here physically, it's maybe not actually as good an experience. And so there's a lot of opportunity for you to help retailers with that.
It is. I think it's going to be really challenging for retail anyway. Well, it is very challenging for retail. When you've sort of got limitations on the experience, like people still have to wear masks, there's a limit of the number of people that can be in store, which means obviously you don't want to fill the store with staff. You want to fill the store with shoppers, which means you're kind of really sort of challenging the experience that you're driving, and hiring great staff, across the world right now is a really great challenge. So there's a lot that is contributing to an erosion of great experiences, but the brands who do it well and the brands that prioritize it will absolutely like seize the day.
That's an awesome overview of like what Lexer does. I think that's really, really valuable for anyone in sort of retail or thinking about customer experience and really stretch their thinking a little bit. I'd love to sort of wind the clock back a little bit and hear a bit more about the Lexer journey. Like you guys are over a decade, you've been building this business up. I imagine like every high growth business, it was kind of like slowly, all of a sudden. What have been a couple of the big kind of milestones along the journey or memorable moments in your mind?
Yeah, memorable moments is a funny one. I'm a pretty nostalgic individual, so some of the milestone moments are really around the sort of team that we had around us over the journey and some of the amazing cultural shifts you have in an organization. So I remember there was this is like a long time ago now. It's probably 6 years ago. I had a really like melancholy day when I realized that we had so many people in the team. I think at the time it was like 5, right? So it was still we were still very small, and we no longer all went to lunch together. So when you're like 3 or 4 people in the office, it's like, what do you feel like for lunch today? Thai or the sandwich shop? Yeah, let's go to the sandwich shop, and you all sort of walk to the sandwich shop and come back. And then like the 5th or the 6th person was inducted into the business. And now all of a sudden it's like, no, I feel like Thai and I feel like sandwiches, and the group broke up. And I was like, oh, you know what? It's never going to be like that ever again. And so that was kind of a really weird kind of memory, nostalgic moment around the organization. And, now we're over 100 people in the team now. Now there is like every cafe around the office is, being used, and there's all different, amazing smells and cultures and whatnot sort of going on around the lunch table, which is fantastic. And it's those kind of things for me that very much touch the feels, around the team and with our people.
Hi everyone, I just wanted to jump in here to let you know if you're enjoying this episode, it doesn't need to stop here. We've taken this episode plus all the other episodes and also video footage from the interviews and made it available for free. There's also a bunch of fantastic guides, tools and resources you can use to grow your business. To grab those tools, just go to www.the-entourage.com/podcast. Right, let's get back into the show.
Yeah, it's funny how the evolution in an entrepreneurial business is oftentimes most marked by how the team evolves and grows. I think that's a great moment to think about. Wow, we're suddenly at the size where we don't all go to the same lunch place.
Or the other day I was this is probably more pre-COVID time. I remember driving down the street and seeing a restaurant, and I was like, wow, that looks like a great place that we could take the team. And it's like, wait, we can't all just turn up to a restaurant. Like, I'd have to book out the whole place. And it's like, oh, that's awesome and shit. It's like, I want to just be able to go to the pub, and it's like, no, we need to like buy out the pub for the night, which we're just not going to do.
Something else I wanted to touch on, sort of to do with the capital raise, right? Like you guys have now raised a considerable amount of money. I think the last round was a bit over $30 million. You mentioned headcount, right? So obviously a lot goes to headcount, but what else does a raise of that kind of size go to in a business like yours?
Yeah, I think, for us, our 2 highest costs are our people and AWS. So the infrastructure that our big data technology stack sort of runs off of. Our investment in things like AWS and the delivery of our platform is completely covered by the cost of services. So that's not really a problem for us. It's not like we have to invest much into that. So we've really just funneled pretty much all of our funds into our team, predominantly in engineering and also in marketing. So pre this most recent raise, we didn't really have a marketing team. We had some people who were in market writing content or producing some limited materials, but we kind of really went hard and said, if we're going to wake up and we're going to compete against Salesforce and Adobe and other startups who are so insanely funded, so much more than what we've sort of raised today, we really need to fire up our marketing machine. The irony is not lost on me that we help marketers every day of the week, and here we are sort of only getting our own marketing underway ourselves. But it was just kind of like we had to make sure we had the right product market fit and that we had the right thing. And you know, through, like I said before, through COVID, we sort of learned where our strengths are, and it was now time to just really go hard on that mission.
I was going to, make the joke about the cobbler's shoes, but actually, I think what's more pertinent is that you guys are like the quintessential product-led business, right? You're high tech. You really got to make sure that you got that product market fit, like you mentioned, right first before you can really start doing the rest of the scaling, which marketing and sales sort of adds on. Less product-led businesses, more particularly, say, service-based businesses or less technical businesses, they often will have their marketing and sales function cranking earlier, and they kind of like iterate their service delivery later. So it's kind of that different style of growth. I'd put us in the latter category.
Yeah, no, it is. I think the reality for us, though, is that we're actually only just getting to the real point of product-led growth. So Lexer's history was we first started working with large enterprise customers. Like our first 3 customers were Westfield, Foxtel, and ANZ Bank, right? Like so we started
tiny ones
in an insanely consultative technology approach. Every time we worked with one of those enterprises, we would be building a better single product. So it was, since day one, Lexer's only ever been one code base, that kind of thing. It's not like every client has their own instances and stuff. But surrounding that product were some really amazing people who were ensuring that the technology was being implemented and used right. And that's still the case for us today. We still have a really large team in our organization who are meeting our clients every day, helping them understand how to make use of the data better, or how to overcome their obstacles or hit their targets and so on. What we sort of see at the moment is this year's been a really big year for us in trying to distance ourselves from that a bit, like moving beyond it and getting ready for that true product-led growth, which, for us, one of our mantras at the moment is like bringing that enterprise technology and making it available to everyone. And so there's a lot of time, a lot of that investment that we raised focused on optimizing the machine, getting it faster, cutting down. It used to take us, many, many months to onboard a customer. And now if you come to us and you've got Shopify and Klaviyo, which is an incredibly common, direct-to-consumer SaaS model, that, you could be set up by the end of the week, and fully up and running. And so that optimization journey is we've still got more to go on it, and we get every day we're hitting new milestones, which is really exciting. So we do look forward to a sort of true SaaS kind of model for ourselves in the future. But the thing is that brands, there's not enough experience in the market of how to do data-driven marketing really well. So our role here is not just to provide technology, but also to educate and mentor.
One other area I thought would be really good to touch on before we have some sort of rapid fire questions to get through is around your journey as a founder, right? Like how's that evolved? How's it changed? What are some of the challenges you've had along the way?
Yeah, it's been some journey. It's been a journey. A couple of years ago, I did this exercise, which, some of you might have heard of before. It's called a lifeline. And you basically draw a line from like the day of your birth through to today. And you sort of draw like, the axis is like happy and sad, or blissful and depression kind of thing. And you sort of, over the years, you kind of draw like, oh yeah, this was a really happy period of my life, and then this is a bit of a dark period, and this is a great period, and so on. And it's so funny when I sit down and do that. It's actually been a while since I've done it for myself. I should probably do the exercise again, because it's worth doing every now and then. It's so funny when you sort of go through the journey of mapping your life as a founder, just insanely how volatile it is. It's like there's no smooth curves. It's like awesome, terrible, awesome, terrible, awesome, terrible. And I have to say there's way more terrible than there is awesome. But the awesome kind of, I think I've always looked at founders, and I look at myself as like, we should be clinically diagnosed with optimism. Like there should be a pill to treat my level of optimism that I have. And that you just need a couple of those highs to get you through another year of lows to sort of push you through and dust off your knees, dust off your elbows, and sort of keep going. But I think I look around the market and there's, it's a bit better today than it had been in the past, but there's so much constant winning that goes on. And the people who are really winning is such a select few. And also, it's the overnight success, but a decade of work leading up to that and whatnot.
Yeah.
We really have to be very cautious about how much we compare ourselves to those success stories that live in the market.
I've not done that lifeline exercise, but it sounds really, really cool and interesting. I think it would be really interesting to be like, what are the things that kind of contributed to me in that really positive moment, and how do I do more of that? And then I suppose the negative is inevitable, and it probably just puts the rest into good, stark relief. But yeah, that's a really interesting exercise. I'm definitely going to do it.
It's particularly good to do with a team of peers as well, because you can sort of really understand where everyone's come from and share some of those experiences, which, as a founder, it's an incredibly lonely journey at times. There was quite a few years in my time at Lexer where I was the only staff member. I was the only person, right? And so now I'm very fortunate to have an incredible team, but also a great peer network, but that hasn't always been the case. And being able to sit down and share that experience, I find like the Lifeline's a great exercise to sort of undertake with some of those peers, just to sort of really just normalize the fact that it's actually really hard and most of the time it sucks.
It'd be super interesting if like some of you were like, that was a time when I was at my best, and someone else was like, yeah, that was my worst. And you're like, no wonder we weren't getting along right then.
Yeah, no, I'm sure of it. Yeah.
All right, Aaron, I've got a couple of questions here that we go through in reasonably rapid fashion. It's called Make It Happen in a Minute. We've never actually determined whether it's a minute per question or a minute for all 5. It's however long we really need.
Sure.
You ready to get into these?
Yep.
What's one area you think more business owners should be investing their time in outside of just the business strategy?
Spending time with customers.
Yep, I agree. Have you got an example where you've like to spent more time with customers and you're like, oh, I should have done that earlier?
Every day of the week. I think the great thing about it is that when I spend time with customers, I'm normally doing it in a situation where I'm sharing, our current strategy or our upcoming roadmap, but I'm really just sitting there listening and watching body language and trying to sort of take it in. And I think, having that opportunity to see and feel and hear their either excitement or disappointment is something that, for me, just directly, like I'm a guy who works off constraint. Tell me what I can't do or tell me what constraints I have, and then I'll go and work out the best way that we can sort of overcome that. And you can only really do that when you're meeting face to face with a customer or virtually with a customer, to have a conversation.
Great. Question number 2. With one of Lexer's values being playful, what's your favorite instance in which this has shown up in the business?
I find there's some awfully good playful moments. I recall we were doing an RFP for a global brand that were headquartered out of Germany, and the RFP had to be submitted by like 5 p.m. local time, like Munich time, and which I think for us is like 3 a.m. or something like that. And we really burned it right until the 11th hour, and then we finished it. We'd had a bit to drink during, like we had a few bottles of wine sort of open around the desks and whatnot. And then we were like, we sort of had this high energy around ourselves because it was such an interesting sort of moment. And a lot of people that worked at Lexer at the time were all ex-advertising. So it was kind of this real, like, felt like our old behaviors of sort of going back into that hardcore pitch mode, which, we don't really do anymore as a company. But we all went to revs afterwards. We're like, I can't go to sleep now. I'm like peaking. Like we need to go and like get rid of this energy. And so we went to revs until closing time, which was just a little crazy. But I have to admit, playful, even though that's a fun memory of the team really like putting everything into something and having a great experience as a group. What playful has actually meant for us isn't so much like play hard, work hard, which is kind of part of the origin of the value, but what it actually has kind of meant for people is that it's really about like letting your quirks show and really being okay with your weirdness and oddities. And it's kind of grown into being this value that represents that people at Lexer can really just turn up and be who they are. And if you're a little weird or you've got some weird quirks, it's like nobody, like they're actually really celebrated. You can bring them to the workplace and you're not really like chastised for it. You don't have to be part of the boys club or turn up wearing that type of outfit. We've got people who turn up in all kinds of gear, whatever makes them comfortable and whatever they're happy in. And that sort of playful value has actually kind of just been like, be yourself. That's kind of really what it's played out to be, which was not intentional, but so wonderful.
And I think values should be able to evolve like that as well, right? Like they start with sort of one real meaning, play hard, work hard, and then as the business evolves and the people in the business evolves, it's taken on a new meaning, which has probably got more meaning to it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things when a new person joins the organization, I have a one-on-one session with them or with all the people who might have joined that week, if there's more than one. And I walk them through our 6 values and tell them stories about each of them and why they exist and what was the origin of it and so on. And one of our most recent starters, so this was the start of this week, she's one of our team members in Los Angeles. And she mentioned it's really interesting that our values are things that can mean different things to different people, but everyone can bring their own version of that to the company. And I think that sort of additive nature of the values, they are behaviors and beliefs more so than rules to abide by. That was kind of on purpose. Like that's what we wanted to do with it. But when you sit down and you write your values, you are kind of making some really big decisions, but also a bit of a gamble. And I'm glad that as all of the gambles that we've made, I'm glad that one in particular has really paid off.
Important one to get right. All right, question number 3. What's a red flag you've seen in business that other business owners should be wary of?
Look, this might be a little cliche, but people, like good people, and bad people, and the impact that has. And one of the red flags that I speak to the team about when I do my values induction with them is I talk about the red flag for me about the interplay of trust and be trusted. We're constantly trying to seek out assholes and get rid of them, or to not have them in. I don't want assholes in my life. Who wants an asshole in their life? Like it's terrible. And my big sort of red flag for that is people who, demand trust but aren't very trusting of other people. And if I sort of think about that and I go to my early days where we didn't know what we were doing, and there was all these opportunity people that you were meeting with who's, were making promises or maybe, I think back to those things and I really wish I kind of had that knowledge that I have today about that interplay of trust and be trusted, and sort of really put people through that. I think back to it. Really, really early on, we were very close to making quite a significant partnership deal with a person who ended up being an incredibly toxic person. And I'm very fortunate that for reasons it didn't go ahead. But if I sat there and I'm like, well, and judged that situation and that scenario in the Trust and Be Trusted book that I kind of bring along with me today, like that would have been an enormous red flag. We probably would have left earlier and not wasted as much time.
Question number 4. What subject should be taught in school but isn't?
That's a good one. This is completely unrelated to everything that is about Lexer and whatnot, but like personal budgeting. It's one of those things where, especially in the industry we're in today, there's some young people who leave university and immediately start earning some mega dollars, in data science and engineering and other sort of fields. And it's just mind-boggling how few people know how to do like a personal budget. Something that I kind of feel like if everyone knew how to do it, I think everyone we'll all be in a better place.
Yeah, you only figure it out like years and years later when like the family pressures start to come up or you're saving up for something like, damn, I should have been doing this years ago.
Or unfortunately, when you've got yourself into a situation that is so dire that you forced yourself. Not speaking from experience there, no.
I've heard people have that situation. Final question is, if an entrepreneur saw a problem in the market that they thought they could solve through business, what's the one thing they should do to make it happen?
Try to solve it, but not using technology if possible first. I feel like there's this constant race to solve every world problem with technology. And it comes from sort of like an adage that's been around the technology industry for some time, which is like, people don't scale, and I'm a bit toxic to that statement, because prior to starting Lexer, I worked in a lot of consulting environments where people did scale and made huge sums of money in, large consultancies and advertising agencies and whatnot. You can scale people really, really well. And one of the things that we sort of do in our innovation cycle within the organization is I kind of like refuse to build a product until it's been proven through human process first. So can we, there might be, we generate an insight reports for our clients. And, we're doing, most of them are done by people sitting at a desk, analyzing data and generating a report. And often people sort of come around and be like, why haven't we built a product to do that? And it's like, because we actually haven't got the pattern yet. We're still learning exactly the slides that we should be presenting a client every day. And it's much easier for a group of smart data analysts to experiment and try new reporting styles, capture new data, present in new ways, whatever it might be, and iterate on that, than it is for us to have built the machine to do that and then iterate on the machine. So I'd rather perfect things with people process first, and then once we've perfected it, we know exactly the product we want to build. And I think that everyone rushes to try and build technology first, when maybe it doesn't. Maybe it should start with just some good gumption, some good elbow grease first.
Yeah, and also the creativity that people bring to it, right? Let that creative thinking happen, and then coming up with refining, innovating, and then you can kind of codify later on. I think that's a really good recommendation.
I think the world that we're in right now, there's a lot of very strong opinions about particular types of technology, like blockchain and, even things like streaming, like Kubernetes and whatnot. And I feel like people lead with a technology instead of leading with actually just solving the problem. You might be able to solve the problem in Excel, and doing it in Excel is going to be a lot cheaper than firing up massive clusters to do things in the blockchain, right? And so sort of leave the fad behind and actually solve the problem first. And maybe the fad is the only way to solve the problem, but I guarantee you there's alternate ways.
Fantastic. Aaron, we've covered a ton of really good stuff. I've probably got one last question to fire at you. What are you most excited about in the next, say, 12 months?
I'm excited to be able to travel again and see more of the team and my family. I think... we all, speaking for myself, like, I learned to live in lockdown, but it's not my ideal situation. So I'm looking forward to having that sort of freedom back again, being able to explore a little bit and just enjoy people's company. It's so much easier when you've got a beer in front of you and the person on the other side of that beer, instead of a screen in between and the internet in between.
In real life. Well, mate, I wish you well on those travels. Hope you get to see all the friends and family, and also make some new ones as well. Been awesome having you on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Make It Happen show. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And it doesn't need to end there. We've actually gone and grabbed a whole bunch of extra resources for you. Behind the scenes footage, videos from this and all the other episodes, as well as show notes that you can grab for free. Just head along to www.the-entourage.com/podcast and you can grab all those extra resources. Thanks for tuning in, and I cannot wait to introduce you to our next guest on the next episode.